We're going to start with the reading from Emmett Fox, and he starts this reading. It's called God the Deliverer. He requests that we read Psalm 18. Well, Psalm 18 has 50 verses. It's 2.5 pages. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So I'm going to read the opening of Psalm 18, and then a couple of the closing verses, and then what Emmett Fox had to say. So Emmett Fox, and this is the Lamsa translation of Psalm 18. It starts, I will love thee, O Lord, my strength and my trust. My refuge and my deliverer is the mighty God in whom I trust. He is my helper and the horn of my salvation and my glorious refuge. I will call upon the Lord, so shall I be saved from mine enemies. For the pains of death surrounded me, and the rush of ungodly men have confused me. The travail of Sheol has taken hold of me. The snares of death preceded me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried to my Lord. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. And then it closes with, he delivered me from mine enemies. Yea, thou liftest me up above those that rise up against me. Thou hast delivered me from lawless men. Therefore will I give thanks unto thee, O Lord, among the Gentiles, and sing praises unto thy name. Great deliverance gives he to his king, and shows mercy to his anointed, to David and his descendants forevermore. So that's beginning and end of Psalm 18, the Lamsa version. And I've made a note to, actually I haven't, I will send you a copy of the whole thing, the Lamsa version, because it is different from the other version I found. So Emmett Fox himself says, everyone knows today that man's greatest enemy is fear. If you really get rid of fear concerning any danger, it has no power to hurt you. It is no mere platitude to say, there is nothing to fear but fear. If you are afraid about something, read this Psalm, Psalm 18, carefully and thoughtfully, realizing the spiritual meaning of each verse, and very soon your fear will begin to lessen and will finally disappear. The advantage of a written prayer like this is that it makes you think powerful thoughts. And as you know, it is the right thought that demonstrates. And to remind you, demonstrates means brings about what you're seeking. The change brought about in your thinking does the work. The psalm opens with an affirmation of faith in God. Always begin every prayer by affirming your faith and trust in God. And then he quotes, I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. Then you go on to say that God is your rock and your fortress and your deliverer, your strength and your buckler. You think of him as the horn of your salvation and your high tower. The horn is a symbol of plenty. And of course, a high tower is a safe place. If you hold on to your faith in God, it is only a question of time before you will be free and therefore safe. So what Emmett Fox does is reassure us that faith in the divine frees us from fear. And fear is an all-encompassing expectation of undergood, if you will, or less good, or low-frequency life. But it seems to me there was an error in his thinking. And Hildegard of Bingen, a 11th century, 12th century mystic, had a similar error when she asserted, I want what God wants. So that leaves, where's the error? Faith in God frees us to what? That's the problem. You know, those of you who are familiar with the concepts of lift-on therapy know that we receive in life that which our internal operating software says we're allowed to have, or we are limited to by virtue of being alive or being who we are. And our late bishop of this church, Sister Pepper, used to say something very similar. She'd say, if your head is saying yes, yes, and your heart is saying no, no, guess which one God listens to? So thus, when they're saying, drop the fear and you'll get what you want is defined by what you've been told you're permitted to have. And whether we're talking internal operating software, whether we're talking religious background, how many of us have come from churches which told us that we're sinners and we're lucky to be alive and we're going to hell, thank God. Another quote from Sister Pepper. So we have so many alleged teachers about God who preach fear, who preach hate, who preach kill the person is different, who preach give me money or you're going to hell. That is not the God of love that Jesus talked about, nor that I talk about, nor the Quakers talk about. It's preaching to be afraid of the less than, or telling you that you are less than and thus undeserving. And that's not what God wants of us, to give in to fear and loathing. And that's what Emmett Fox is telling us. We do not need to fear or expect to live a life where there is scarcity of love, scarcity of respect, scarcity of good things in life, or scarcity of a relationship, a positive, ongoing, powerful relationship with the divine. That is what Emmett Fox and Sister Pepper, and from what I know of Hildegard's life, that's what they're preaching against. Don't buy into the fear. Don't buy into the teachings that generate fear or come from fear. So when we free ourselves from those teachings of lack and misery that others try to hand us, have tried to hand us, will try to hand us, we can choose to walk in the direction of God's good, God's giving, and God's love, which is why the title of this is Free Your Present and Future. And what I'm going to do here is explore 3 concrete actions or sets of actions that we can take to help us move our lives into the higher trajectory, the higher frequency, toward the higher frequency, closer to the divine love. And to me, this is the trajectory more in keeping with the good and the love that the great divine wishes for us and has available to us if we allow ourselves to access it. So action step 1, find and change any beliefs which limit your access to all of God's good. Now, there's many ways to do it. You can do it through prayer, through assistance such as Lifton therapy or EFT, hypnosis, spiritual guidance counselor is another possibility. There's lots of different ways to find those obstacles, those mistaken beliefs, or if you will, myth-staken beliefs. And within this step, don't only change so that you can expect and know that you are deserving of good, are worthy of good, are allowed to have good, that you can choose to be willing and able to have good and God's love. All that is part of changing your understanding in step 1. And to remind you what my wise sister learned, one of the things she learned from her time with the Chinese shaman, the more you express gratitude, the wider the delivery pipe for the next gift coming your way. Be sure, as you move to change your outlook, to eliminate any of the toxic hesitations about your worth, to openly and joyously and gladly welcome the good that comes in, however small, however many pieces, because in doing so, you are allowing the divine to give you even more. The divine and all the angels, all those spirits, all those who serve the good in life, including those here on earth who are sensitive to God's good and love and seek to serve it. So get rid of obstacles, joyously welcome and accept the good that comes to you, every piece of it. So, action step 2, keep your moral choices on the good side, because one is to clear out obstacles, another is to prevent ourselves from tripping ourselves up, stepping into bear traps, if you will. What was his name? Clayton Christensen, a writer best known for his business insights, was a deeply religious Mormon who wrote about faith as well. And one of his key points was he was reflecting on people he'd known from the business schools where he taught and where he'd studied, how many of them ended up in narrow, proscripted, very sad situations. Divorced, alcoholic, addicts, jail. And he said, one of the big issues, one of the big responsibilities every one of us has is the moral choices we make. He wrote, or someone wrote, our lives are filled with the need to make small moral choices often. And choosing the lower path, or if you will, the lower frequency path, that's my addition. Even just choosing once increases the odds that our life path will fall into a downward spiral. He wrote, and this is a direct quote from him, and you can tell he's a business theorist here. The marginal cost of doing something wrong just this once always seems alluringly low. It suckers you in, and you don't ever look at where the path ultimately is headed and at the full costs that your choice entails. Now, interestingly, the writer G.K. Chesterton, who wrote many religious tracts, but also wrote a series of mysteries, the Father Brown mysteries, which you might, if you enjoy mysteries, they're a lot of fun. In one of the mystery stories, one of his short stories, Father Brown addressed a crook. And I'm having to paraphrase here because I do not know where to find the actual words he used. But he said, to do good is to maintain a level of good. But to do evil sets you on a slippery downward path where your next evil action will be worse than the last. And you will find it more and more difficult to ever regain a level of good. So just reflecting on my life, every day there's one or two or more cases where I need to say, okay, how am I going to handle this? Now, for me, if I do something that is less than optimal in terms of speaking to the divine, representing the divine, I feel sort of bad. But there are times when I'm not sure which it is. And I really have to give thought to try to make a decision that will keep me on the level path of good, rather than start me on the slow progression to less good. And occasionally I realize I've made a mistake and need to admit it, confess it, make it right. This is something all of us face as human beings. It's part of our human condition. So step 1, clear out beliefs that you're not worth it. Step 2, avoid making steps or taking actions that take you toward the downward path rather than the upward path. And then step 3 is learn how to detach yourself from the pains and sorrows and worries and shortcomings of this existence. Father Richard Rohr, whom I refer to often, writes about how a Buddhist approach can be so helpful. It's a series of writings called Letters from Outside the Camp. And in it, he introduces us to the process that I'll be sharing with you. And he explains that Letters from Outside the Camp is a reference to the Hebrew Bible, where there are encampments of religious tribes, if you will. And he expands it into here, where there's encampments of religious beliefs, encampments of political beliefs, all of whom are defensed and everybody else is wrong, sort of thing. And he says, these letters are addressed to those of you who are sincerely and devotedly trying to camp elsewhere than in any political party or religious denomination, and outside the world of strongly held opinions. He says, we must know full well that we must avoid temptation to become our own defended camp. In other words, we can walk openly in our beliefs. We don't have to make other people not okay. You know, in this own church, what we say is there's many paths home. Each one of us here, should we compare, we'll have a different path than the rest of us. And you know what? That's just the way is good. Not to worry about it, follow your path. If you're concerned that you might be missing something, you know, that's what Phyllis, that's what Lori Kay, you know, all of us here, if you want to talk with someone, each of us has wisdom to share, to help you noodle if you're feeling flummoxed. So he goes on to say, in our ugly and injurious present political climate, it has become all too easy to justify fear-filled and hateful thoughts, words, and actions in defense against the other side. So we're talking here again about fear, just as Emmett Fox did. We project our anxiety elsewhere and misdiagnose the real problem, the real evil, forever exchanging it for smaller and seemingly more manageable problems. The over-defended ego always sees, hates, and attacks in other people its own faults, the parts of themselves that we struggle to acknowledge. Most of us do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. Let me say that again, because I think this is important for us to carry in our concepts and in our actions every day. Most of us do not see things as they are. We see things as we are, which should provide even more motivation to clear out the junk, the crap in our beliefs that we've been fed by teachers, by parents, by other adults when we are young, or who knows where. He introduces then the Heart Sutra, or called the Heart of Perfect Wisdom, from the Buddhist tradition. And he says it's considered by many to be the most succinct and profound summary of Buddhist teaching. And it ends with a mantra that is considered the mantra beyond compare, because of its daring proclamation of the final truth that it takes our whole life to uncover and experience. It is enlightenment itself and hope itself in verbal form. And the words in English are gone, gone, gone all the way over. The entire community of beings has gone to the other shore, enlightenment. So be it. And he gives us, if you will, a ritual. And he wants to make sure that we don't think that this is a morbid set of statements. Rather, he views it as similar to the joy of Christians saying, Alleluia, at Easter when it is announced that Christ is risen. He calls it liberation from our grief, our losses, our sadness, our attachments, our manufactured self. And it accepts the transitory and passing nature of all things without exception, not as sadness, but as movement to the other shore. And we, of course, don't know what the other shore is like, but we do know it is another shore from where we stand now, and not a scary abyss. So And I will send these to you in case you want to use them or refer to them, but I'm going to read them. It's a statement and then the refrain, if you will. All the centuries before me, gone, gone, entirely gone. In fact, if you want to hop on and say the gone, gone, etc. with me, doesn't hurt. All the nations of the earth, gone, gone, entirely gone. All kings and generals and governors, gone, gone, entirely gone. All the wars, plagues, and tragedies, gone, gone, entirely gone. All human achievements by individuals and groups, gone, gone, entirely gone. All sickness, sin, and error, gone, gone, entirely gone. All our identities, roles, and titles, gone, gone, entirely gone. All hurts, grudges, and memories of offense. And that's really important, isn't it? Gone, gone, entirely gone. All enslavement, abuse, and torture, gone, gone, entirely gone. All disease, afflictions, and lifetime wounds, gone, gone, entirely gone. All rejections, abandonments, and betrayals, gone, gone, entirely gone. All human glory, fame, money, and reputation, gone, gone, entirely gone. And he has another 10 lines or so, but I'll leave it at that. You'll get them in the email. So keep this in perspective. Remember, in previous readings, Emmett Fox talks about this is only part of our existence. And if we mistake this for all our existence, then we're not detached. And he's not saying detached in the sense of, oh, I guess whatever will happen will happen. It's knowing that what we do, what we experience here and now is just here and now. And we need to give it sufficient reality for the fact it's just here and now and not anything more. You hear people say, well, my husband has left me, I have nothing to live for, I'm going to die. I've lost my job, I'm nothing. They're mistaking this existence and forgetting gone, gone, entirely gone, and all the existence that is to come on the other shore. And that's important for us to remember too as we walk through this life, to keep everything in perspective. And Rohr says, in our world, detachment can become a kind of exodus, an abandoning, whether forced or chosen, of the very things that give us status, make us feel secure or moral, and oftentimes to pay the bills. And then he says, in his book, No Man is an Island, Thomas Merton discusses the spiritual link between detachment and hope. And the connection, he says, may be counterintuitive at first, if not contradictory. But then Merton explains, we do not hope for what we have. Therefore, to live in hope is to live in poverty, having nothing. Hope is proportionate to detachment. It brings our souls into the state of the most perfect detachment. In doing so, it restores all values by setting them in their right order. Let me say that again. It restores all values by setting them in their right order. So if we are properly detached, it no longer will matter to us that we haven't made $1 million, that we haven't built a church with 200,000 followers, that we haven't, whatever it is that we think less of ourselves for not having achieved or owned. Hope empties our hands in order that we may work with them, which means we're no longer distracted by the illusions of this earth. It shows us that we have something to work for and teaches us how to work for it. So that's what I have to say today. And in writing this, I realized I have some work to do. But of course, I'm here on this earth, so of course I have some work to do. Just as each of us does as we prepare ourselves to detach and one way or another, sometime or another, move to the other shore and whatever awaits us there. So them's my thoughts for the day. Anything anyone wants to contribute or talk about from it? Yes, Lori Kay.
That was chock full, that talk, chock full. Thank you, Brian. I want to comment on fear and on detachment. And I want to say that, as usual, whenever I hear anybody talk about give a spiritual talk, I'm always keen to see if people are holding on to the idea that they need to define their terms for themselves. So, in hearing you say the very time-honored thing of we have nothing to fear but fear itself, or fear is the greatest thing we have to fear, or things like that, which we've all heard. The question is, what the heck does that mean? Does that mean we're not supposed to fear ever? I believe not. I believe that what it means is that we're not supposed to set up our tent in that part of the, what am I trying to say? It's not a jungle. It's all kinds of sand. I can't think of the word.
In the desert?
That's the word. Yes, desert. Thank you. So, when we say fear, we have nothing to fear but fear. So if we fear, we're still fearing. It doesn't work for me. I think the point that I've come to now is when I feel fear, which I'm feeling a fair amount of these days, in different ways, different words, but we'll just call it fear, is to find the ways to bring the light in so that the fear is going to dissipate, because I can't push it out. It's like you can't push the dark out of the room. You have to turn on the light. So I just wanted to say that about fear for what it's worth to anybody. And also detachment. I used to think that detachment meant like I don't care about anything or anybody. I've had some moments and some time in the last week where the detachment that I have felt has been from the struggle. And what's happened in the last week is I've sort of ventured back out into the world, virtually anyway, and I've started doing connections with people through networking, and long story short, I've got opportunities coming my way and support coming my way and options coming my way, and because I'm not insisting I'm not insisting that it be the way I think it's supposed to be. All I'm focused on is what I want to feel. And therefore things are coming that are astonishing, quite frankly. I can't yet tell you that it's all externalized and like I can show you my big boat. I can't, not yet, but I see the shift. I feel the shift, and I am amazed. So that in that way, I'm living detachment, and I'm loving that, and looking at it and trying to, work with it and not work with it. Let it be. Just let it be.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, Liz.
When you say it's gone, does that mean that there couldn't be any residue from an experience or from an event? Are we declaring that there's no residue?
I think more it's emphasizing that things pass.
Okay.
At least that's the way I take it. That
Okay.
everything is ephemeral, or as Alan Ramsey, a teacher long dead, said when he found himself watching people try to bring his dead body back to life. Oh, that's the movie. This is reality. So that everything's in perspective. No, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't mean that you're free. Mistakes that I made back when I was crazy, I still shudder at sometimes. Perhaps at some point that'll be gone. It's not as bad as it used to be. But on the other hand, that was then, and this is now, and I don't make that mistake again.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Somebody else with a thought? Yes, Ellie.
It's almost ironic that you would bring this up. Because in the book by Rabbi Label Wolf, he makes a profound statement. Our aim is to learn to use the wisdom spark wisely. If the spark is drawn from wisdom, it burns truly. If, however, we allow ego and insecurity to tap into wisdom, then that fire it creates is fed by a false image of ourselves.
Cool.
And as Lori Cade was talking about the light, or fear and detachment, with the passing of the actor who played Dumbledore in Harry Potter. I don't know how many of you watch it or not, but one of his quotes was, "Happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to turn on the light." That's, to me, a simple thing to do. You flip a light switch. But yet sometimes the most simplest things we forget to do because it's so simple.
Okay, Lori Kay, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Ellie. Yeah, the turning on of the light when you're depressed, when you're really in a bad space, it's also, adding to forgetting. It's also feeling, there's a whole range of feelings around resistance, or simply not knowing what it even means to turn on the light. It's all of that. And I think that the most important thing I've learned about fear in these last 2.5 weeks is that it is meant to be a jumping off place. It's not a thou shalt not build your tent there. You've got to use it as a way to look at its opposite in your own life, to show yourself that it's not the only thing that is. Because the light is like 10,000 times stronger than the dark. And if you let just a little bit in, it'll start to shift really quickly that day, that hour.
Okay, Karen W.
Sometimes it's helpful to give your fears over to the Creator. Just cast them off their stronghold, and I cast them out, and then I give them to the universe or the Creator, and ask for the universe or the Creator to take it from you and make you stronger and have a helping hand in this, and whatever the Creator's will is, that it be done, and ask for peace, strength, and comfort, and to be strengthened. And sometimes I find that very helpful, and that's all I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else with a contribution? Lori C.
I think really kind of a theme here is everyone's talking about being detached from the outcome of things. And a friend of mine shared something with me yesterday that she read on Facebook. I'd like to read that. In 100 years, like in 2123, we will all be buried with our relatives and friends. Strangers will live in our homes we fought so hard to build, and they will own everything we have today. All our possessions will be unknown and unborn, including the car we spent a fortune on, and will probably be scrap, preferably in the hands of an unknown collector. Our descendants will hardly know who we are, nor will they remember us. How many of us know our grandfather's father? After we die, we will be remembered for a few more years. Then we are just a portrait on someone's bookshelf. And a few years later, our history, photos, and deeds disappear into history's oblivion. We won't even be memories. If we paused one day to analyze these questions, perhaps it would understand how ignorant and weak the dream to achieve it all was. If we could only think about this, surely our approaches and our thoughts would change. We would be different people. Always having more, no time for what's really valuable in life. I would change all this to live and enjoy the walks I've never taken, the hugs I didn't give, these kisses for our children and our loved ones, the jokes we didn't have time for. Those would certainly be the most beautiful moments to remember. After all, they would fill our lives with joy. And some of us waste it day after day with greed, selfishness, and intolerance. Every minute of life is priceless, so take time to enjoy and be grateful for and celebrate your existence.
Wow. Could you copy that and email me, and I'll stick that with everything else I'm going to email as a follow-up to this.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's gorgeous. And it certainly puts it in perspective. Thank you, God, for having enabled this community to gather again. Thank you for the love we share, the love you share with us, for the wisdom and guidance that you enable us to gather from you and from our fellow community members. Thank you for watching over us, for guiding our feet, for guiding our actions, and for guiding us so we can return again to this community. We give you thanks for all the good that we experience, all the healings we receive, for all the opportunities to be in service to you and to this world. And we thank you for enabling us to have a smile on our face most of the time. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, in full gratitude for all that you have provided. And amen.